A lot of these last names that so-called black people have, they've been trained to believe that they got them through slavery. Why is that? Because they want so-called blacks to believe that they all came here from the west coast of Africa, and that is not accurate. A large portion of our people were already here in the Americas as these so-called quote-unquote aboriginals.
Who is Unks Crack Pipe? Who is Unks Crack Pipe? Who is Unks Crack Pipe?
Me, I'm a powerful activist out there.
You wanna give me some background?
Yes, well, so my family from Detroit, Alabama. Half of us went to Detroit, half of us stayed in Alabama. So my part is in Detroit. So
I always gotta educate. Y'all give me a second. The reason Alabama and Detroit, all right, most black folks during the Great Migration, folks living in Alabama, there was a train route to take them up to Michigan area, Detroit. If you lived on the East Coast and the South, you take that going up to the Carolinas to New York. Mississippi take you from Mississippi to Chicago. So you all out here, many of you know, if you're from Detroit, most of your folks are from Alabama. You're from Chicago, most of your folks are from Mississippi. If you're from New York, most of your folks are from North Carolina and South Carolina. So
Absolutely. My father's side, he came up here from Virginia, and his mother was from North Carolina. So that's definitely true what Judge Greg Mathis is saying. Let me also say this. When you look at these two brothers' last names, the one in the plaid, his last name is Washington. I did a video on this. A lot of these last names that so-called black people have, they've been trained to believe that they got them through slavery. Why is that? Because they want so-called blacks to believe that they all came here from the west coast of Africa, and that is not accurate. A large portion of our people were already here in the Americas as these so-called quote-unquote aboriginals. They shared the land with the Mongoloid tribes and a lot of other races that were already here when the Europeans, both black and white, started to come here. And that brings me to my next point. A lot of so-called blacks came here from the British Isles, as well as from Germany, Spain, Portugal, etc. When you look up the last name Washington, over 90% of the people with the last name Washington are so-called black. Okay? I did a video called Welsh Names Equal Black Names. Many of the quote-unquote Welsh names you'll see oftentimes are held by so-called blacks here in the Americas. Why is that? Because the Welsh, the original Welsh, are Celtic, and the Celts were so-called black. Many so-called black people here in the Americas who have the last name, or I should say the United States, have the last name of Williams, Jones, Powell, Griffin. These are so-called Welsh last names. All right. You had a pirate by the name of Black Bart Roberts, who was a Welshman, probably the greatest pirate of the pirate age. He was a so-called black man. And if you look him up, it will even tell you that he was so-called black and he was from Wales. There are websites that are set up of Caucasian Welsh who wonder why it is that so many so-called black people have Welsh last names. Like I said, I already did a video on this. It's called Welsh Names Equal Black Names. And I covered the issue with this brother right here whose last name is Washington. They lie and state that so many black people changed their last name to Washington to honor George Washington. Why would they do that for? It doesn't even make sense. But as I tell you, brothers, incessantly, history is basically narrative. Conventional history is narrative. It's storytelling. They have to make up lies to cover real history because they don't want you to know, as a so-called black man, that you were something other than what they depict you as, that being a so-called slave.